The year is 1941. War rages across the European continent. A single man's ambition, a hunger for power, will soon ignite one of the bloodiest campaigns the world has ever seen, Operation Barbarossa. In the largest surprise invasion in history, Nazi Germany launches a staggering assault. Their target, the vast expanse of the Soviet Union. Millions of soldiers will clash, the earth will burn, and history will be irrevocably changed. But why? Why this sudden, ferocious onslaught? What drove a nation to risk annihilation on such an unforgiving battleground? To grasp the why of Operation Barbarossa, we must dissect the mind of Adolf Hitler. This was a man consumed by a twisted ideology. He craved absolute conquest and believed in an Aryan master race. The Soviet Union, in his eyes, was a land ripe for exploitation. Hitler despised communism. It was the antithesis of his fascist ideals. He saw the Soviet Union as a sprawling, diseased organism destined to collapse under its own weight. It was, he believed, weak and ripe for the taking. His adversary was Joseph Stalin, the ruthless dictator of the Soviet Union. Brutal and paranoid, Stalin had purged his army officer corps in the years before the war, crippling its leadership. He too harbored expansionist dreams. Years earlier, he had signed a Non-Aggression Pact with Hitler, a cynical deal that bought him time, though falsely reassured him of Hitler's intentions. Hitler manipulated the fears of the German people. He painted the Soviet Union as a monstrous enemy, a communist behemoth poised to crush Germany. It was a preemptive strike, he declared, a battle for the survival of civilization itself. Nazi propaganda demonized the Slavs, Russians, Ukrainians, Poles as Untermensch, subhuman. This dehumanization paved the way for the horrific atrocities that would unfold on the Eastern Front. Hitler's motivations were as complex as they were monstrous. At the core was his warped ideology of Lebensraum, living space. He dreamed of exterminating the Slavic peoples living east of Germany. These lands would become a vast Germanic empire stretching to the Ural Mountains, a source of slave labor and resources for a 1,000-year Reich. Economic necessity also fueled the invasion. Germany's war effort depended heavily on imported resources. The Soviet Union held vast reserves of oil in the Caucasus, fertile farmland in Ukraine, and vital industrial centers. Seizing these would cripple the Soviet war machine and bolster Germany's long-term ability to wage war. Militarily, Hitler was convinced of a quick victory. He believed the Soviet Union was a house of cards, rotten from within. Stalin's brutal purges had decimated the Red Army's leadership in the late 1930s. German intelligence reports painted a picture of chaos and disarray. Operation Barbarossa, launched on June 22, 1941, was built on the doctrine of Blitzkrieg, lightning war. German forces, having overrun much of Western Europe with shocking speed, would smash through Soviet defenses, encircle their armies, and force a rapid surrender. It was an audacious gamble, hinging on the illusion of Soviet weakness. The plan relied heavily on the principles of Blitzkrieg, the lightning war tactics that had brought Germany such success in Western Europe. Panzer, tank divisions formed the spearhead, supported by mechanized infantry and overwhelming air power. Their goal was to punch through Soviet lines, encircle entire armies, and trap millions of Red Army soldiers. Speed and surprise were paramount. German forces relied on radio communication and coordinated attacks to overwhelm Soviet defenses before they could react. They bypassed strong points and focused on encirclements, aiming to cripple the enemy's ability to resist. However, the Germans underestimated the resilience of the Red Army. While initial Soviet leadership was chaotic, Stalin ordered a scorched earth policy, denying resources to the invaders. Millions of Soviet troops retreated eastward, drawing the Germans deeper into Soviet territory. As summer bled into fall, another unforeseen obstacle emerged: the sheer vastness of the Soviet Union. German supply lines stretched thin and their mechanized forces struggled on muddy terrain. The brutal Russian winter then delivered a devastating blow. German equipment malfunctioned, and troops, ill-equipped for the cold, suffered from frostbite and hypothermia. The Blitzkrieg strategy, designed for quick victories, faltered. The early momentum stalled before reaching key objectives like Moscow and Leningrad. Instead of a swift collapse, the Soviets adapted and launched punishing counteroffensives. Operation Barbarossa, Hitler's audacious gamble on Soviet weakness, had backfired spectacularly. Operation Barbarossa bled the German army white. The war in the East became a grinding war of attrition, where casualties mounted and victories grew scarce. Hitler, increasingly desperate, refused to consider retreat. He threw more men and resources into the meat grinder, convinced that another offensive would break the Soviet resistance. It was a madman's gamble. Instead, the Red Army, its industrial output now exceeding Germany's, relentlessly pushed the invaders westward. The cost of Operation Barbarossa was staggering. Historians estimate between 25 to 30 million Soviet civilians and soldiers died. Millions of Axis soldiers perished as well. The Eastern Front would become the bloodiest theater in the largest war the world has ever seen. Operation Barbarossa unleashed a torrent of devastation and fundamentally reshaped the world. Hitler's bid for supremacy ended in ignominious defeat. The Soviet Union, at enormous cost, emerged as a superpower rivaling the United States. The Iron Curtain would descend across Europe, setting the stage for decades of Cold War tension. Could Hitler have won this war within the East? Could Stalin have better prepared his nation for the onslaught? These are the debates historians continue to this day. The lessons of Operation Barbarossa, the dangers of unchecked ambition, the horrors of total war, must never be forgotten. If you found this journey into history chilling yet fascinating, hit that like button, share this video and subscribe for more stories of how the past shapes our present.